One of the most popular questions that I get is, how do I improvise over chord changes? How do I not just play the E minor pentatonic scale in an E minor progression even though there's like 4 other chords going on? You may refer to this as outlining chords or anticipating chords. I'm going to show you a bunch of different ways to approach soloing over chord progressions so that you not only break out of different scale boxes, but you also find your voice on the guitar. For those of you wondering, this is exactly what my course Guitar Super System is focused on, is finding your own guitar voice and figuring out how to improvise using all this music theory and putting it into a context that makes sense so that you can get what's in your head to come out in a musical way on the frets. So please check out that course, link down in the description if you're interested. It really helps support my channel. And this is a sneak preview of what you can expect. So let's start with a simple chord progression, and I'm going to give you multiple different ways to think about the chord progression first, and then we'll go over actual application of various music theory and different licks and things like that to help you get integrated into this mindset. The chord progression we'll go with is E minor to C to G to B minor. And I'm going to put this in more of a musical context as I go over different various ideas, but I just want to give you those chords right now. And I'm going to show you the first thing that I personally think of when I see a chord progression or hear a chord progression like this. The first thing you want to do, what key is this in? So again, leaning on a little bit of music theory, which you can find in my course or across my YouTube videos, I know that this is derived from the key of G major because all of these chords, E minor, C major, G major, and B minor, those are all chords within the key of G major. So as a result, I know that I can use any mode of the G major scale, any mode position that is, to improvise over this chord progression. So that is step one, understanding the tonality of the chord progression. So I know that E Aeolian is going to be a very comfortable place for these chords. But we don't just want to be trapped in one box, right? We don't want to be only restricted to one mode or one tonality, one area of the neck even. And here's what that would sound like, just for your reference, if I'm using only E Aeolian or even just E minor pentatonic. I'm going to use only that tonality over these chords. Most of that sounded pretty good, right? Some of it though, some of the notes, even though they were technically correct or in the key over the chords, they weren't, effective. They weren't as musical or as vocal as you may want them to be. And the reason for that is because we're kind of stuck in a tonality or in a box where we have these preconceived notions and antics on the guitar to play certain licks that we're kind of programmed to play because we're very comfortable. So breaking out of that comfort zone is basically breaking out of the scale boxes and outlining different chord progressions, which is the whole point of this lesson. So we're going to move on to the next phase of thinking, which I am going to dub targeting notes. And what this means is you personally experimenting with different notes that happen over these different chord changes and figuring out which note you like or which group of notes, which intervals sound the best to you over these different chords. And the way you do this is basically to just ring out the strings or ring out a chord and then find an interval that you like. So for example, here is E minor. That's a D, that's the flat 7. So I like that note, maybe I'll target that note and in different octaves. So when that chord rolls around, I'll find that note. And that is just one note, of course. There are many different notes over each chord. As we move on, C. What note do I like over the C? How about major third? Again, multiple octaves if I want to. That's an E note, so maybe I'll target that E over a C major chord when it comes. Next, moving on to the G chord. That 9 has a nice, kind of beautiful tension to it, right? So maybe I'll target the A note over the G. And then finally, moving on to the B minor. Let's see, the B minor, I could target this D note. So again, multiple octaves, understanding which intervals sound the best over the chords that you are playing over, and targeting those intervals will help you kind of anticipate these chord changes. So if you have an E minor chord ringing out and you know that the next chord is going to be a C, you can start looking for that C note. What did we choose? We chose the major third, right? So maybe we're improvising over the E chord. I'm going to target my D note that I liked, that flat 7, and then I'm going to target the major third of C, and you'll kind of feel how that works together. See if you can hear the chords without me really even playing them. So you can kind of feel those chords happening. So if you can outline chords without really any chords behind you, just kind of accompanying yourself, it's going to help you be that much more effective when there is music happening behind you. So I'm going to demonstrate now going through those same chords in a little bit more upbeat context, but you'll feel the same idea and how effective it can be to target different notes. So I thought that was a lot more effective than the first kind of jam that I did, where I stuck to just one position, one mode, one tonality of the guitar neck. So now we're going to kind of come full circle here. And just to review, we started with analyzing the chord progression, figuring out just what key we were actually in, so that could be our starting point. And then we moved from understanding what that starting point is, in other words, which scale is actually going to work over this thing, and then we chose different target notes from that scale to target as the chord progression happened, in order to anticipate and put ourselves in the best position to be as musical and vocal as possible. So now the third and final kind of step here is an ongoing process that I'm still working on, every guitar player is still working on, which is finding your voice, improvising completely off the cuff. And basically what that means is going from each chord and choosing either a different mode or a different chord shape or a different triad shape or a different scale to play over each one of these different chords. And here are the different ways that you can choose what to do. You can play modally, which means over this E minor chord, I will choose E Aeolian type of shapes. And then when it switches to the C major chord, I'll choose C Lydian. Remember, we're out of the key of G major here. So C Lydian type shapes. And then when the switches over to G major, we'll go to the G Ionian type shapes. And then finally to the B minor, that would be B Phrygian type mode shapes. That's one way to think about it. What I like to do is actually arpeggiate these mode shapes. So thinking of actual breakdowns of these mode shapes, either using triadic shapes or arpeggio shapes. So for example, instead of just when that B minor chord happens playing the B Phrygian kind of robotic sound, maybe you play something like kind of arpeggiated shapes. So we're not just going straight up and down, we're arpeggiating, which means choosing notes from that B minor tonality, and you don't have to use root, third, 5, 7 arpeggio shapes. You can create your own interval shapes, whatever you want to. So breaking down each mode into arpeggios, and again, even just simple triads, working through the chord progression simply like this. All of those are just triads that I was playing, and again, arpeggios, triads, different chord shapes, modes, all of this stuff is detailed in depth in Guitar Super System, linked down in the description, so please check that out if this is interesting to you. Now, I'm going to go ahead and try and put all of this knowledge into action and play over a kind of more sped up version, so the chords are going to happen even faster, but I will still apply all the ideas that we've gone over in this lesson. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope it helped clarify some things, maybe if you're trying to find your voice on the guitar. I think that should be the ultimate goal of any musician, to try and be their own player and say what's in their head through their instrument. So until next time, guys, keep shredding.